Hey everyone, this is it, the official final production version of the LEGO Flintstones set. Based on a LEGO Ideas submission, I previously did an overview and thoughts video covering this set, but that was based upon high quality photos that LEGO had released. Now I have the actual thing here built in front of me in person, so I'm going to go through the whole thing again and see if things look and feel any different in the flesh or in the plastic. First off, the house itself. This has some pretty good visual presence, even though it is a little bit lacking in color, as it should be. It has good size, and the shape is strange enough and foreign enough compared to things you normally see made with Lego that, it makes you have a double take, I think. My favorite part of all of this, of the entire set, is the surround around the base of it, which has some foliage, and I like how the edges are rounded. Just some nice little pieces in here, some different colors with the two versions of lavender for the flowers and leaf pieces in there, and some small pebbles and rocks around the edges, done up nicely. This curve is done pretty nicely, a little bit of tiering in there. Got some different shapes for the windows, the main windows on the front, so things aren't completely symmetrical. It's a brick-built or plate-built door, and the roof is done pretty nicely. It's a little bit on the flat side. It's actually a little bit flatter than I thought it was going to be, or it looks more flat than I thought. A little bit less dynamic. Has a nice slope going towards the back, but it definitely fits on there well, and it was a proper build. Everything in this set is a proper build. It's actually a little bit on the advanced side. There aren't too many really crazy special builds in this, unexpected uses of parts, I would say, but it was still pretty involved to assemble the whole thing, which is a good feeling, you spend a good amount of money on a special edition set, you want to have a good build, you want to have a nice challenge. As you turn this around, you're able to access the interior, but this is also able to open up, and you can also remove the roof very easily. It slots in there pretty perfectly, but it just comes right up. No issue there. No fancy building again. And once you have that open, not only do you get light into the interior, you can also get a little bit more space here. I guess you don't really need to have the roof off to bring those open, but what that does is it just creates this additional false space in the middle where you don't have any pieces, but you can still, pose some additional figures in there. For this main living space, you have the sofa, which is a very straightforward build, actually. No studs on the side construction or anything, just studs on top of studs, and it'll hold two figures on top of it. And you have the coffee table here with a little fruit bowl on it. The surface of the coffee table is an existing piece from the Unikitty collectible figures series. It was originally intended to represent a cloud. I think it's a fine piece to use there, not necessarily the very best. No stickers in this set is great news, so that right there is a print. And I'm not sure if you noticed the window dressing. You got the kind of stylized, very colorful leopard style or zebra style print, a little something in between the two. It's intended to be made up, but those are all prints as well, and there are just 4 of those 1x3 tiles. There's just a little bit of cabinetry work along the window there, and the door just hinges open pretty simply, and it is secure enough. It's not going to fall off, even though it's mostly attached with just one clip there. And then you get the big old TV with its rabbit ears on top and another print. And it shows the newscast with Dino missing. I'm just going to pull that off awkwardly here so you can see a little bit better. That is supposed to explain the fact that there is no Dino build in this set, but I think it's a little bit of a lame excuse. I think this set should have included a Dino. Off to this side, you have the small end table with the prehistoric phone on it, which is a pretty good build. That's a clever use of parts, and it all fits together well. While opposite that is the large floor lamp, and also a box with a bowling ball and some bowling pins. The ball is just a Technic ball end piece, full size down in there. And the last thing that's part of this house build is just the coconut palm off to the side with the brightly colored lime green leaves. And you can angle this around a little bit differently. You can have it angled more towards the front if you want. It's got some coconuts under there in medium nougat, and that pretty much does it for this build. You also have a side build done for the mailbox, which is a fine build in and of itself. That's another print right there. It's just a little bit odd to me that they went with Flintstone. I should say Flintstones, plural. I initially thought that might be some sort of reference to a specific episode or a production error or something, and I found this, which is a production layout sketch, they said, from season 1, where they don't have the S at the end, but notice that it's also misspelled Flintstone, not Flintstone, and somebody had to add in the little T. But anyway, enough about this. It's just a mailbox, and yeah, it's just printed on one side. And then there's the car. At first glance, this looks pretty good to me. I think that anyone who's familiar at all with the Flintstones would look at this, even without the figures, and immediately see what it is. So, based on that, I'd say mission accomplished. There are some little things about it that aren't ideal, like for instance, the axles, I'd say, are too large, but with the 2x2 round tiles used, that's just to cover up the pieces behind, because this actually does have axles within it that allow these roller style wheels to turn, and notice that those tiles turn with them. You don't get great traction on a very hard surface like I'm on right now, but on most surfaces these actually will rotate just fine, as long as you're careful when you're building this not to squeeze everything together too tightly. You may find that everything gets a little bit tight and you need to pull things apart and just kind of work it back and forth to create some looseness in there. If you've ever built a complex Technic model, you've come across that when building drivetrains. This doesn't have much in the way of Technic stuff in it, just the axles are Technic pieces, but it's still that same sort of effect. You have to watch out for friction. I think the overall design of this is pretty nice though, with the cloth piece here. It actually feels nice when it's turned this way. It's nice and soft. It's a custom cut just for this build. You're able to fit 4 figures in there just fine. Got the steering wheel here. You know, it's good. And you can get the figures in and out easily because the whole canopy just rotates back. That's very, very convenient. All in all, a pretty good design, but why are they sitting? They should be standing. I wish that this used studs on the side construction to have some forward-facing studs so that you could have some hollowed spaces and then just attach the figures with at least one leg attached to the back and then maybe have one loose to make it look like they're actually walking, or at least like Fred himself is powering this thing. You know, that's the one thing that I think is really off about this, and would have been much nicer if they had gotten it right, you know, to really capture that thing that's that aspect of the original Flintstones. I almost made the same mistake. Car, you know, that really made it. Because look at that. You know, it almost just has the space ready. It's just that wasn't done. So at least you can customize it, I'm sure, fairly simply to at least allow one set of legs to dangle down there. All right, so let's start checking out these figures. Now, high quality renderings, if not photographs of these, have been available on the internet and circulating for quite some time, so there's been plenty of debate about their design back and forth, but they look a little bit different in person. I was particularly curious about a few things. First of all, the nose for Fred. I wanted to see how that actually looked in person. They've got that kind of negative space in the 5 o'clock shadow to represent his large bulbous nose. And, you know, in person, there was the possibility that it would come across differently than it did in the pictures. And looking at it now, I don't know if this is going to really come across on camera for you, but for me, looking at it with my own eyes in person, it doesn't look even as good, even as believable as I thought it would, which is not a good thing, because, you know, the face design is really important to a licensed character. I'm talking about Fred. Now, Wilma, I think, actually looks really good. She should not have highlights for her eyes. Technically, she shouldn't have round eyes either, but as a hybrid between the original source material and the Lego specific style, I think this is actually pretty good. And she does have one alternate face, which is good. and it's well printed as well. Speaking of the prints, well, notice you have dual molded legs. That's good. I was curious about the prints for the skin tone to create the little bit of interface layer between the two colors. So you see it down in here, and also there's some print up there, and there's some print over there in the skin tone. It's a little bit reddish compared to, the actual plastic color, but from any reasonable distance in person, you don't see it as clearly as you do here. So that actually, I think, quality-wise has worked out just fine, at least on these two figures. Fred's face is also just a little bit misregistered, where it's just not quite lined up just right. I think that the darker, the 5 o'clock shadow print on it is a little bit too far to the right. Should have been just a little bit more to the left, and that'll probably vary a little bit from set to set. Barney with the nose thing, to me at least, actually does look a little bit better in person than it did in the pictures. Just a little bit. Still, it's not quite there. Needed at least just a small outline along the top edge of the 5 o'clock shadow, little shaded area, to better define the nose. Coming straight on is a difficult thing to do with these characters that were usually depicted slightly from the side. I think that they had the right thing going that just didn't quite get there. I think Barney overall is better looking than Fred was. Of course, Barney should also have no highlights for his eyes, so that's a little bit awkward here. And then Betty does suffer a little bit with the skin tone print on the top of the torso, because it's against the very, very contrasting medium azure, and it's just not opaque enough. So there's definitely some bleed there, and compared to the renders and compared to what you see on the box, it's just not as high of quality. I like the recolored Emmett hairpiece for Barney. I like the dual molded legs again. And again, one of these gets an alternate face. Too bad we didn't get an alternate face for Barney, though. Something to show embarrassment, I think, would have been appropriate for him. That's a really cool print for Betty's face. And again, on the back of Betty's torso, the skin tone just doesn't come across. I think it's even more obvious here that it just doesn't look like skin tone. You have to know that that's what that's supposed to be, whereas you're supposed to be able to just kind of blur your eyes a little bit or look at it quickly and see the exact same thing for this and for this. Those should be identical. And again, a little bit down here, looks imperfect, but it's actually better in person, to be honest. You're really seeing every little detail up this close. Lastly, with the figures, there's also this issue with Barney almost looking like he's taller than Fred, but they're the exact same heights, which should not be the case. One of the continuing jokes and points of contention between these two is that Barney is so much smaller, so much shorter than Fred, and they just didn't capture that at all. They didn't even try here. Of course, that is also an Emmett hairpiece there as well. Just wanted to make sure to include that note. It is obvious to see, but yeah, that's about it for the figures. Oh yeah, also included as a side build, I was going to say small side build, but it's kind of big. Just a rack of ribs here with an awkward lavender colored plate for the base of it to attach this to the car. So the idea here is that you attach it and then there's too much weight to the side, so it's actually able to lean over. Now this is just barely staying. If I get the canopy back to the correct location. Stay. There we go. Just barely stays. Just barely. But you can always just add another piece underneath to help hold that over. Add another piece to the outside to give it a little extra weight. But that's the deal there. Stay. Thank you. After building the set, here are the spare parts that are left over. So quite a lot of pieces, but all very small and nothing printed or anything, but definitely some interesting stuff. And for this set, they also include a teal colored brick separator. So in the US, they are asking $60 for this set. Honestly, that feels kind of rough just looking at the size of everything. But then you have to consider the price to part ratio, which is actually very good. And then you have to consider the fact that there are all of these exclusive prints for this and the exclusive cloth piece and some recolors. So, looking at it a little bit more objectively, a little bit more fairly, I guess, the price is about as good as I could reasonably ask it to be. I could want it to be cheaper for sure. Just based on the size, I'd rather it was more like 50 US. And I think that's even being kind of generous to Lego, just on the price to volume of stuff ratio. But while I am happy with the overall size, and I'm happy that this set came out for fans of the Flintstones, I still don't like the male figures here. I think that they both could have been done and should have been done a fair bit more realistic and more accurately sized to each other. The graphics work just went too far in the direction of the Lego style, the Lego minifig style, and I really think that it should have been more true to the Flintstones style instead. The house is a good build, and it takes you some time to put it together. The car, I think, is a good build. Too bad that you're not able to do the legs properly, with it. And it's too bad that the kids aren't included, and it's too bad that Dino isn't included here. So a lot of things are missing. I personally wish that this had, maybe gotten another round for improvement internally before it was released. I feel like there are some things about the original fan submission that were better, and I feel like there were some things that Lego could have done better just on its own. But a good build, regardless, has its flaws. Let me know what you think based on what you've seen here. I've got the full build for this also. That's up on my build channel, so you can check that out. I will give you a link to that right now and also in the pinned comment. And I will turn things over to you. Feel free to comment and let me know what you think about this. I'll talk to you again soon.